So take a moment to straighten and ground. Get the body comfortably balanced. We human beings are a combination of earth and heaven. So ground down and lift up. Let the breath flow with all comfort and ease. Close the eyes, bring the mind to inward. And let's chant Om together. So inhale very deeply. Om. 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 I'll chant Satchidananda Guru, please join me. Satchidananda Guru, Satchidananda. 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 Jai Shri Sadguru Maharaj Ki Jai. So our topic is Journey into the Heart of Peace. 4 meetings, each 1 hour. So it's not a big course. But I wanted to talk about the spiritual journey. I'm going to make references to sutras from Patanjali Yoga Sutras. And I'm going to reference sutras that are not normally part of our teacher training. Just because most of you, and I saw the names of those who signed up, most of you know the basics from Raja Yoga. So I thought we'll explore a little bit in the periphery. But first I'm going to talk about journeys in general. So when we think of our spiritual journey, let's also think of trekking. We've all gone trekking. It takes a lot of effort getting up the mountain. We take wrong turns, we get lost, we get hot. We fall down, we scrape a knee, all of that. It's part of trekking. There's also magnificent views, meadows that are very healing. We come home with great photographs. Spiritual path has a lot of the same ingredients. It's a lot of effort. There's wrong turns. We definitely get lost. We definitely fall down. And there are beautiful views and healing meadows. Okay? So it's not that different from a trek. It really helps to have a map, okay? Because there are forks in the road. There are parts that might be dangerous if we get off the path. So we hope to have a spiritual map. And our sutras provide that for us. But it was written more than 2,000 years ago. We think more than 2,000 years ago. And a lot of gaps in our understanding. So it's a challenge to sort that out. But anyway, so that's one analogy to our spiritual journey. Another analogy is an ordinary, everyday subway system. So I'm just going to shape this part by part. When you go into the subway station, the first thing, if you're a stranger to this city, is you go find the map locate yourself, locate your destination, and then see the route and find out how much fare you have to pay. It's not that different. We all have, in general, we have the same destination. We want to be peaceful. We want to be happy. We want to have a fulfilling, abundant human life. So we share that in common, but we're very different when we get to the specifics. Okay, we have artists here. Uma's a musician. Claire is an artist. So many of you have artistic endeavors which form part of your definition of fulfillment. So if we got to specifics, every one of us would have a different destination. That's a given. Also, where we are is going to be different. And that's actually the key thing to our journey, is an honest appraisal. Where are we now? Because if you stand in front of that subway map and you don't follow the red arrow and acknowledge this is where I am, this is where I start, you're going to end up in the wrong place. So sorry to say it. So understanding where we are is key. And then figuring out the route. Do I have the fare? Where do I change cars? Do I want to go just part way, all the way to my destination? Those are things also. So these are ordinary parts of our journey. Even GPS uses the same kind of model. You have to, your phone has to know where you are and where you're going before it even gives you routes. And then you have to choose bicycle, on foot, bus, car, and whether or not you pay a toll. So same process. Every journey has that. So I think the key thing, as you look at the sutras, I'm going to point you to Sutra 23 in Book 1. Samadhi is attained by devotion with total dedication to Ishvara, Ishvara being God. Guess what? Right across the room is Ishvara. I was so afraid I'd have technical problems. I roped him into being here so we wouldn't disappoint you twice in a row. Okay, we salute you, Ishvara. For those who might not know, Ishvara is our tech person here, and also a most beautiful soul. So commentary. Swami Satchidananda. Here he says that there's another way to success through self-surrender. By the term Ishvara, Patanjali means the supreme consciousness, not the individual soul, but the supreme soul. And he goes on to explain who this Ishvara is. I hope you're listening closely, Ishvara. Okay, number 24. Ishvara is the supreme Purusha, unaffected by any afflictions, actions, fruits of actions, or by any inner impressions of desires. Okay, that's a bit wordy, but what I want to point out is he's unaffected by impression of desire. In other words, he has no desires. He has no need, the commentary says he has no need to reap the fruits of action. Okay. So then what is he? It goes on, Sutra 25, he is omniscient. That might be a bit beyond our reach. But, so I don't think anyone, if we ask you to write down the goal, would write, I want to be omniscient. But being free of desire, not attached to the fruits of our actions, these are the basic foundations of karma yoga. According to Swami Satchidananda, is the superhighway to the goal, learning to be selfless. And as you read in this, what you're going to come across is this concept of Ishvara being not a destination and a being as much as it is sort of a quality, the quality of selflessness, the absolute pure quality of selflessness. And imbued in that, the capacity to be 100% present. If our mind is not entangled in what's going to result from this meeting, this action, this donation, if our mind is not entangled in that, then we're freed up to be here in the present. And then the possibility of being completely selfless in our choices comes before us. So it's the attribute of the divine to have not even the faintest impression of desire, to be just a presence that's pure. And it's the attribute which, when developed by the devotee, takes us to the ultimate goal. Okay. So there you are. Gurudev always called it the shortcut. He gave us the same talk every Valentine's Day. He said, learn to love unconditionally and surrender yourself and let the Lord do the work. So here's what I want to talk about today, effort and surrender. So what is surrender? There's a lot of different ways you can define it. In military sense, it's a defeat. Okay. You put down your arms. Okay. You let the other king take over. Okay. We don't think of surrender. If anything's defeated, it's the egoism. And you know, between friends, between spouses, this interplay happens. You know, you're having a dispute, and then you say, okay, do it your way, or let's try it your way. And sometimes we do that with a big feeling of disgust. So maybe it isn't the best example, but surrendering to a situation, yes, it's part of life. We do it all the time. Things aren't exactly as we want. Yeah, take it in stride, move on. This surrender, though, is an acknowledgement of how huge, how magnificent, how powerful the presence of the divine is. So it's not just like giving up half your couch for the dog. Sometimes we're surrendering to the dog because he wants his space. No, it's because we get a glimmering of the fact that we're pretty small in the face of a divine presence. So it's useful to look at the qualities of the divine, consider what it would take to run this beautiful spring afternoon, all the strings Mother Nature has to pull to bring it all into place and make it so gorgeous. Just think the whole universe is being run by some entity that also is personally and intimately involved in our own self, and make sure that we get breath every few seconds. I always liken it to the sun. Sun is so many millions of miles, 93 million miles, I think. And yet it's so personal. When it's a warm day and the sun is stroking your cheek, it's so affectionate, so healing, it's so intimate, so personal. That, to me, is like the Lord. The sun can run our whole solar system, sustain the life of our 7 billion people, plus all the other species on our planet, and yet it's intimate and personal. So as we bring into consciousness the fact of this benign, all-powerful, maybe omniscient presence, of course we surrender. Gee whiz, you aren't going to do battle. No chance. So it's interesting. But the thing is, even if we reach that point where daily we say, okay, not my will, thy will, it doesn't excuse us. We're not off the hook. We have to make effort. Okay? We have to make supreme effort. So therein lies the rub. Okay? How to make that effort and yet not be attached to the results and willingly hand it over. Now, by chance, between last week and this week, I picked up a book. Okay? You probably can't see what it is. Okay, Elizabeth Gilbert. What did she write? Do you remember? Bestseller for, I don't remember, 3 years, I think. Eat, Pray, Love. Eat, Pray. Good for you. Was that Claire? Somebody remembered. Okay. So she's written many more books. This one is called Big Magic. And just by chance, she actually, before she was famous, she came on one of the tours to India. I didn't stay in touch with her, but I got to know her. We were together 2 weeks. We knew she was going to be famous. It showed up. It just showed up. But of course, I have a very special interest in her. And so when I saw this book, I picked it up. Oh, let's look. And it's about the path of a writer and the level of perseverance it takes and the ability to face the rejections that are inevitable for a writer and the surrender that the writer goes through, and also the invocation of inspiration and muse. It's so applicable to our topic. I'm going to read you parts of it. But first of all, I'll tell you a little story from this book. So Liz met Anne Patchett. Anne Patchett, also very famous, her, I think, most famous book, Bel Canto. She's a great writer. So they had a friendship, sporadic, but after some years, they had met at a writers' conference. They were having breakfast together and sharing stories. And Liz Gilbert shared that she had started a book and put it aside. And Anne Patchett asked her, so what was it about? She said, well, it's about a middle-aged lady from Minnesota who's in love with her married boss. Her boss has gotten involved in a harebrained scheme down in the Amazon. And our protagonist was sent down to solve it. And the book carries that forward. And what happened is Anne Patchett, did you read State of Grace? Anne Patchett had the same plot in her mind. Liz told her about it after she had let it go. She decided, I'm not writing this book. Anne Patchett was writing about a middle-aged lady from Minnesota in love with her married boss who had a harebrained scheme to take place in the Amazon, and this lady was sent down to solve it. And that ended up being a beautiful book, State of Grace. But they were both in complete shock. In complete shock. How's it possible that they had arrived at the same plot? At 2 different times, 2 different states, their relationship wasn't a close one. But they decided that the idea was there in the ether, and they have both downloaded it. What a story. How amazing is that? But it makes you rethink what's going on in this world. Okay? Source of inspiration may be hovering around us all the time. It's attunement. Tuning in to download them. And it takes a certain amount of surrender. I think it takes a very particular attitude, not the attitude of I'm the creator of this, but I'm receiving this, I'm receptive. We could use the word surrendered. Okay? So I'm going to read you a couple passages from this book. And then let's switch over to discussion. Okay, right, the mystery of the Lord. So first, she speaks about that episode between herself and Anne Patchett. Then she says, it left me with a dazzled heart and a sense that I live in a most remarkable world, thick with mysteries. It called to mind the British physicist Eddington's memorable explanation of how the universe works. Okay, listen up. He said, quote, something unknown is doing we don't know what. Okay, that's from an eminent scientist. Okay, that's surrender for scientists to speak like that. He's admitting there's a lot going on up there, and we're not too sure what it is. Okay, next, a chapter on entitlement. In order to be free to create and explore, you must possess a fierce sense of personal entitlement. Okay? The poet David Whyte calls this creative entitlement the arrogance of belonging and claims that it is an absolutely vital privilege to cultivate if you wish to interact more vividly with life. Without this arrogance of belonging, you will never be able to take any creative risks whatsoever. Without it, you'll never push yourself out of the suffocating insulation of personal safety and into the frontiers of the beautiful and unexpected. The divine force will actually take you out of yourself and allow you to engage more fully with life, provided you have this arrogance of belonging. Then she talks about the nasty dialogue. That's nasty dialogue that automatically arises when you get an artistic impulse. And it goes, who the hell do you think you are? Get back into your hole. And then she says, how do you dialogue with that part of you that puts you down? She says, speak to your negative interior voices the way a hostage negotiator speaks with a psychopath. Calmly, firmly, without backing down. And the psychopath asks, who the hell do you think you are? The answer, oh, it's funny you should ask. I'll tell you who I am. I'm a child of God, just like everyone else. I'm a constituent of this universe. I have invisible spirit benefactors who believe in me and who labor alongside me. The fact that I'm here at all is evidence that I have the right to be here. I have the right to my own voice and a right to my own vision. I have a right to collaborate with creativity because I am myself a product and a consequence of creation. I mean, she is so cute. And I don't know if you find pertinence between this and our spiritual path, but I do know for sure that it's hard for us to strike out and that there are voices that jump in and say, hey, who do you think you are? That's a big target. Don't aim for the elephant, just take the rabbit. But this idea of being like a negotiator, and yes, and speak up for these delicate parts of ourselves that need an advocate. I really think it's so important for our path. You know, no matter who you are, what your path is, our spiritual self is a very, like a beautiful, delicate flower that we want to be able to express in the world. And it takes a lot of creativity. Let's see what else. Okay. Another exchange. This is a lady who speaks environmental biology. Her students are all fervent young environmentalists. Right at the outset of the course, she asks them, do you love nature? Every hand goes up. Second question, do you believe that nature loves you in return? Every hand in the room goes down. At which point she says, we have a problem already. She says, before she can teach these students how to heal the world, she has to teach them how to heal their notions of themselves in the world. She has to convince them of their right to even be here at all. Okay. She has to introduce them to the concept that they might actually be loved in return by the very entity that they themselves revere, by nature itself. Does that ring right? It does for me. Okay, just one more. Just one more. Fierce trust demands that you put forth the work anyhow, because fierce trust knows the outcome does not matter. Karma yoga. I think it's every writer's challenge to know, to love the writing, to love the creative process, and know whether or not it's well received, published ever, good reviews, bad reviews, it doesn't matter. The process of engaging with it, creating something, bringing it forward, that matters. She says the outcome cannot matter. Again, it's karma yoga. Fierce trust asks you to stand strong within this truth. You are worthy regardless of the outcome. You will keep making your work regardless of the outcome. You will keep sharing your work regardless of the outcome. Let what you do, love it so much that the words failure and success essentially become irrelevant. Okay, from Liz Gilbert. All right, that may have seemed a bit off the track, but I think it's actually important for us, one, to see that even somebody so extremely successful as Liz Gilbert faces the kinds of challenges that we all face, no matter what our aspirations are. And that she has a spiritual background to some extent, but it hasn't been her main path. But that she also, through her efforts in writing, came to this karma yoga principle, that we offer it up, and the devil might care whether it's successful or unsuccessful, and that attitude is key to our being able to engage successfully with the creative process and with the spiritual process. So the other book I accessed is I picked up the wrong one. Where is it? This one. Golden Present. So I started looking at it between last Sunday and this Sunday, and I came immediately to a couple of passages that were really pertinent to this topic. So if you have it, pick it up. And let's go to May 4th. The question is, the questioner asks, how do I know the difference between going with the flow or being totally out of control? His answer says, every situation will be different. Which flow are you going with? You better flow with the people going in the right direction, get into their boat. He also says, keep yourself neither too tight nor too loose. It takes real courage to surrender yourself completely. Whatever comes to me is God's will, and I'm ready to face it. Okay, there we go. Sounds like Liz Gilbert and it's Swami Satchidananda. Whatever comes to me is God's will, and I'm ready to face it. Then he goes on to talk about free will and destination. Take a look at March 15th. He says, ultimately, the divine will is the final authority. But human beings have a certain amount of free will. And he says we have enough to make mistakes. Experience is the best teacher, and that's why free will is given. But those who really want to use free will in the right way will choose to use their free will to give themselves in the hands of a higher will. Okay? So you have that capacity, what you choose to do with the free will. But if you give your will, link your will to the higher power, then you're in the hands of the Lord. He writes, in the case of human beings, free will is given with certain limitations. For instance, you can't fly like a bird. Oh yes, quite true. Your will is limited, but within these limitations, you are allowed to do certain things freely. But you will face the result of whatever you do. Well, that's May 9th, May 11th, May 13th. They're all along the same lines. But this is where I wanted to pitch our discussion. I'll read to you 9th and 11th. May 9th, consciously submit yourself completely to spirit. Let God's will take over. Then there's no responsibility for you. Your only job is to surrender and allow God to do everything. That means allow the consciousness to function through. May 11th, the truth is nothing belongs to us, not even our thoughts and ideas. Everything happens due to God's presence in this frame. Without God's energy and will, you cannot even think. Krishna said, if you even think that your talents, abilities, and so on are yours, then offer them to me. But even better than that is to recognize that they never were yours. It's all the play of the Lord. Well, there you go. It's really a big job. I think part of it is refining our mind so it's subtle enough so that we begin to perceive divine presence around us. And then developing our capacity to have an appropriate relationship with divine presence. Understanding the action, the skill of surrender, and at the same time, making supreme effort. So this is a kind of a complicated path, but let's hear from you. Give me examples of when you've made effort and then turned it over. Yeah, let's start with Claire. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for such a beautiful and rich talk. I was just like, okay, so much to say. But I have just a couple of quick comments. First of all, I think anyone who's done any kind of creative work has experienced what's often in non-spiritual terms called the state of flow. And that's very much just channeling the divine. Because in that state of flow, when you're truly in it, you're not, it's kind of like I don't even know how to describe it. The focus is so great, and it's not like you're not making decisions, but it's almost effortless. And I think that the kind of nasty dialogue, as she calls it, which we all, it's like I just laugh because that's kind of when you break that flow. And it's something my painting students and I talk a lot about. It's like, I say, just, bypass that voice. And when it comes in, I mean, just laugh at it because it's just not worth, but anyway, it's so common, but I think it has to do with that state of flow. But when you were talking about like the creative process and, artistic impulses and so forth, and saying, I don't know, that may seem like a far reach from spirituality. I was really reminded of the story of the Buddha when he was visited by Mara, who's the demon in Buddhist mythology. And Mara's like, who the heck are you? And he touched the earth and said, I am here.
Ah,
Yeah. And it's the same thing. I'm present. I'm here. I have a right to be here on this earth. Go away, Mara. So to me, that's very much like pushing, looking at those nasty impulses and just saying, no, you don't. Yeah, you're wrong.
yeah, isn't that gorgeous?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Mother Earth's testament that he's her child and sacred in his own right. Thank you. Thanks for that, Claire. I knew you would have something beautiful to contribute. Go, I can't see. Uma? Thank you.
I really appreciate it. Beautiful talk.
Thank you.
I just finished Big Magic.
Oh, you did? How awesome.
And I plan to read it again. There's so much in there that just speaks to my heart. And I have an experience, every month I'm a member of a songwriters collective or group. And every month, the first Sunday, which is today, we need to present a song to the group. These are some of the people in there, I call them the elite songwriters. Anyway, so I was, efforting a little bit, but at some point, the past few days, I just said, okay, God, if you want me to write a song, okay. If you don't, okay, I won't have one. I'll just show up anyway. And as I was doing something else, the song dropped into my mind. That is, the melody did. Went over to the piano, put it into my voice recorder. It's so fleeting. These inspirations, you have to capture them. But I understand where it's coming from.
Yeah.
It's not me, it's a gift. It's a gift, and you have to value that and be, you said, aware of the divine presence, and that you or me, I'm a channel. I'm an instrument, and it's coming through, and it was in a style that I normally don't write. It was, and I said, that's fine. Okay, let's, very nice, a kind of old fashioned waltz sort of thing. Okay. It's all a gift. And you are a gift. Thank you so much.
Oh my, what a gift, sweetheart. I made a total mess of this book. It was spotless. It's full of underlines now, but I couldn't resist. Thank you. Okay, beautiful testimonials. Let's hear from someone else. Bhakti's here. Hi, Bhakti. Helen, do you have? Yes, Helen, please. Yes. Thank you. Go ahead, Helen.
Am I unmuted? I think so.
You are unmuted.
I just wanted to say something fell out of my copy of The Golden Present, which seems apt. It says, today your fear of the unknown will be lifted and you will feel free. Have no idea where it came from. It's a company called Terra Mundi and their phone number, which is a UK number. I have no memory of it. I just thought I'd put that in the equation and say that as a creative, I've been a performer for many years, and the whole thing of I was a dancer. And as you were talking, I kind of realized I don't dance. It's like the dance kind of does me. And it's such a pleasure to do it that if I show up, well, I haven't for years now, but if I show up for an audition, it was just like, well, that was fun. You know, if I get the job, wow, that's fun with some money, hopefully too. So that's the attitude that I had to take, because otherwise it all becomes so competitive and serious. And I was very lucky at the time to be hanging out with the Hare Krishna movement quite a lot. So I was having a great spiritual input into what I was doing and seeing it from a different perspective. And it's just been an amazing part of my journey to be able to dovetail, if you like, the creative process and really enjoy it a lot of the time, because I recognize it is that just a receiving and a giving out for nothing other than the pure. And it's not always joy, it's often quite hard, you know, it's quite challenging, as is to write. My partner's a writer. You don't just sit there and flow for hours a day, you sit there at the computer going, oi. So this has just been a really lovely talk, and it's great to hear from other creatives as well about that process. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Helen. How lovely that we have an artist, a musician, and a dancer. How wonderful is that? You know, what I inspired to mention is that Gurudev said that our creative artists in the act of creation are having a very deep meditation. He says it's not different. So the meditator uses mantra or concentration to go to a deep place and have communion. The artist is doing exactly the same. He gave great regard to our artistic members, because he saw it exactly the same, that creative effort, I think when the art is successful, it's because there's been communion, which is the same as the goal of the meditator. So that it's a pathway. It's a pathway, and I think the sharings of the three of you help to illustrate that a necessary part of that path is being able to surrender and to have the selfless attitude. So it's shaping you as you do this work. Oh, Sarani, please.
As someone who's not in the more creative realm, I'm not a dancer or a writer or an artist, but I was listening and feeling a little bit left out and wondering, what about those of us who are more just in, you know, taking one step in front of the other, going through life. And then I started thinking, but I have those experiences in another way of what Claire was saying about flow, where you just feel like your life has, or maybe it's not my life, but it's hours or moments or whatever that they are what they're meant to be.
Yes.
You are doing exactly what you need to be doing and want to be doing and are supported in doing. And for me, I think it's being with children and grandchildren. And when I was teaching, it was that was a lot of it. But I'm also finding in doing kind of more work in NGOs and nonprofits and activism kind of work, that it's so helpful when you're making decisions about where to go next to just offer it up and try to come from a place of yeah, that you're an instrument and that your ego, you're trying to let go of your ego. But I have a question, and that is do you have some way of measuring or some way of kind of making sure that you're not getting in the way of yourself? It's not the nasty part of yourself talking, but that you're really doing what you're called to do, and kind of being I don't know, free will. It's just that's a hard thing for me, and it's like that razor's edge almost of walking with the divine rather than taking all your cues from what you want and what you desire and what your ego is telling you to do.
You know, we all have self-doubt, Sarni, and we wonder if we're being compelled by our ego or whether we're attuned to the divine. We all wonder. I'll tell you this story. I hope it's applicable. Gurudev was having some photos taken of him in a park, and the photographer was there, and Carole King was there. And they were walking around looking for, you know, a good place, a good setting for the photographs. And Carole King was chatting with Gurudev, and she said, you know, I have deep regrets for not being vegetarian. She said, during my last pregnancy, the doctor said I needed more protein. And so I was a meat eater for the whole period of the pregnancy. And then I continued eating meat for another year until I finally let go of that. But I feel so bad about it. He said, Carol, if God had wanted you to be a vegetarian during that year, he would have made it happen. It wasn't your doing. He just put her guilt. He just put it to rest immediately. And I think in hindsight, that's a good way for us to look at things. Because sometimes the work that we're doing is not for the result that we thought it was, but it fits into a bigger picture. So we may have a project, maybe it takes 4 months, and maybe it really falls short of our expectation. But then it turns out 2 years later, you see that that project was exactly the right thing at the right time. That fit into some other greater scheme of things. So I think it's important to hold that perspective, one. And also, Sarni, I think you're an immensely creative person. I just want to say that because of this group that we have here. I recognize a couple of artists, so I, singled them out. But living life itself is immensely creative. Just every day, the choices we make, we are all creative artists, and we're creating on the canvas of our life every day a new canvas, so to speak. And I think, I read from Liz Gilbert because it was so cute, for one thing, and also because the lessons that she came across as a writer are lessons that apply to everybody, wherever they're going, whatever their particular career path is. Yeah, the work you've done with babies, mommies and babies, oh my God, I can never forget that. That was so creative. I think Bhakti's hand went up. Did it, or were you just scratching?
No.
Hi, Bhakti.
No, it was a hand. First of all, I love everything that everyone said. But it reminds me, and Sarni, I'm with you. Like, I've never really considered myself to be like an artist, even though, I sing to God. I play the harmonium, usually on my altar only. And but I did this work study called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. And going into that, I thought, well, what am I going to have? How am I going to contribute? And there was one part of the course that she asked us to write our own prayer to God around creativity. And, my prayer was something like, dear God, please let your creative energies flow through me and everything that I, say, do, and think. And, I pray that these energies help me to heal and all of those that I come into touch with. And I still do that prayer. It's on my altar. But what, our creative energies and going with the flow of things, it's so, for me, it's picking up a rock and, just observing like, my gosh, how old is this, and the lines in it and that sort of thing. And that's being creative for me, and another prayer that Swami Satchidananda that I have written on my altar too is the one that he suggests that says, God, let me have faith in you. Let me know that you are doing everything, everything for me. And, that you're taking care of me, and let me just remember that. So it's fascinating that, it's fascinating to me how we can use creativity and just, Thich Nhat Hanh and washing the dishes and, and making everything a meditation and making it all creative. So, yeah, that's just what I wanted to share. So thank you, everyone. It's a beautiful conversation.
Thank you so much, Bhakti. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Yeah. Let's do a few minutes of meditation. Are you ready for that? So we've had beautiful thoughts, beautiful souls, beautiful sharings of heart. So during our few minutes of silence, let's just kind of bask in the communion that we feel and being together and rejoicing in the divine presence and our capacity to make contact with it. Let's just enjoy those feelings for a few minutes. So I'll chant Om one time, and we'll have about 3 or 4 minutes of silence. Om. Om Shanti. So next week we'll tackle a big topic, the guru. What it is to have a guru, how to develop our relationship with our guru, what it means to be a guru. And for that, could you, if you have this book, Patanjali Yoga Sutras, we'll look at the sutras 25, 26, and 27. And I want to go back a little bit to summarize the thoughts we've shared today. One is that spiritual journey is a journey like any, with a lot of challenge, a lot of missteps, a lot of effort, a lot of rewards. Another is that, like any journey, we have to clearly assess where we are and where we want to go and the best route. The third is looking at the subject of surrendering and how that becomes part and parcel of having a sense of the great divine cosmic presence that is available to us. And just noticing where the ego comes in and blocks that relationship, and noticing where the ego releases and opens to it. It's not just creative artists, it's all of us. Opening to divine presence or sometimes blocking it. And then noticing how that links to our attachments, our what derives from the ego, our expectations, our ambitions, our fear of being disappointed. Then the next thing we looked at is a little bit of the voice that puts us down, says, don't even try, it's not worth it. Go back into your hole. So, a spiritual path takes a lot of courage. We're swimming against the current, and there may be many in our community who don't really approve of the choices we're making. So it takes a lot of courage. And we have to address the voices that arise from inside of us that don't want us to take those steps. But again, the example Liz Gilbert gave was that of a hostage situation, the negotiator. Very amiable, very understanding, but asserting the divine privilege of being a human being and having a chance to participate in this magnificent creation. That's all it is. Our creations, our talents are just our way of participating in the magnificence of this world around us. So I'm very thrilled that we got over our obstacle last week, and here you are. Even extras have come. Thank you so much. Well, lovely, lovely souls coming together. Big kisses, and I'll see you. So we have 3 more sessions, each 1 hour. Our topic next week will be the guru. I'm looking forward to seeing you then. Om Shanti.